my God. So today at work, I was on the bus, and when I stood up to the bus, I honestly looked like I wet myself because my
What do
entire
you mean?
water bottle fell, like leaked
No.
into my bag, and then it leaked through my bag onto my lap. And I was just like blissfully aware, just reading my book. And then when I stood up, I just had this massive wet patch. And then my first thought was my laptop, because I've already broke one laptop from
Mm.
work by
Oh
there
God,
was like
yeah.
oil from my lunch spilled in my bag, and then it just like seeped into the screen of the Mac, and I had to go to work I don't know how this happened. I think it might have been me, but I'm not sure. So I already did that once, so then that was going through my mind, and I was like, oh my God, I'm actually gonna have to pay for a new Mac. But tell me why, please. Like, why is that so embarrassing? Because I just had like water all over me, and I'm just like bright red because I'm like getting off the bus. Like, why does it look like I've peed my pants? And then just walking into work like that is so humbling. Please tell me why that is so embarrassing.
To be fair, I know exactly what you mean. Like, I've definitely had my water bottle like leak. Sorry, I don't know why this is making me laugh so much already. I've had my water bottle leak. Sorry, I don't know what's wrong with me today. Oh gosh. I think this is going to be a giggly episode for me, like I can already tell. The reason I'm laughing so much is because, like, I remember every time it happens to me, there's always, like, papers in my bag and they all get, like, really, like,
Oh,
and it's, like, so
yes.
embarrassing,
You
like,
just pull it
having to
out of your
pull
bag, like.
Oh, that's cracking me up so much. Like, honestly, these kind of conversations actually make me laugh so much. And I remember having one of these conversations with one of my friends once, and like we were talking about like icks and just like what a man does that gives you the ick. And there's
Oh
one
God,
thing
yeah.
that like if I see a man do this, like I just cannot. And it's like seeing them use a vending machine.
What?
Like if I see you using a vending machine, like I will get the full on ick, and I can't explain it. I don't know what it is, but like it just gives me the ick so bad, and I cannot find anyone who agrees with me. But it's
No,
just
do you know what mine is? It's kind of similar along that lines. Is you get those like wheelie shopping baskets in Lidl and
yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
If I
yeah.
see a man with one of those just like dragging them along behind him,
Really?
I'm
Oh,
like, that's a
that's so
bit icky.
interesting how everybody has like completely different icks. Because like to me, that wouldn't give me the ick at all.
Really? Like this little clunky basket and he's just pulling it along.
And he's getting
It's not
stuck.
actually that. Oh yeah, get stuck in between two trolleys. Like,
I feel like no, sorry, I don't relate to that. I don't at all. But I feel like
but a
some people have
vending
really
machine.
yeah, because it's so embarrassing because you like have to go up and you're like looking, then you have to like punch in the numbers, you have to put your coins in, and then like if it gets stuck, and like you have
Coins.
to go and find
Sorry, who
someone.
puts coins in a vending machine anymore?
Oh, I don't know because I don't use them, Taz, because I can't even begin to imagine doing it. And then like it gets stuck and they have to go and find someone and be like, oh, excuse me, like my Snickers bar has got stuck.
My
Oh,
quavers are stuck.
oh no, not the quavers. Oh, because it reminds me of like it reminds me of like kids with like what's this and quaver hands. Oh, this is actually too funny.
Oh.
Anyway, I feel like we're just actually chatting a load of rubbish and like we're actually here for science. So let's get into today's episode. We're going to be talking all about the origins of DNA and I'm very excited for this. So let's go.
Oh yeah.
Welcome to the So Cultured podcast, hosted by Liv and Taz, exploring the world of science and tech unfiltered.
This season, we're diving into the origins and taking you on a thrilling journey through the breakthroughs and untold stories that shape today's biggest scientific fields.
And of course, every episode brings the same mix of fun, fresh perspectives, and gossip, aka laboratory. From lab scandals to workplace drama, nothing is off limits.
This is So Cultured Season 4, The Origins.
Imagine a world where Earth is unrecognisable. Volcanoes are spewing molten lava, lightning is crackling over a dark sky, and oceans are teeming with strange, unformed chemicals. There are no plants, no animals, no life as we know it. But somewhere in this chaotic alien landscape, something miraculous begins to happen. Molecules collide, merge, and transform, setting the stage for the birth of DNA, the molecule that would go on to define every living thing on Earth. Fast forward billions of years, and today DNA shapes our entire world, from solving crimes in forensics to editing genes with CRISPR. It's not just a molecule, it is the storyteller of life itself. But how did this incredible molecule come into existence? Before we dive into the origins of DNA, we have to ask something even bigger. What is life and where did it come from? These questions have fascinated humans for centuries, and early attempts to explain them might surprise you. And we are back here already, guys. Like, we're not even a minute into this episode, and Taz just guessed who I'm about to tell you about.
Aristotle. Why does he always come up? Honestly,
Blogs,
every single
he's back.
episode, like, oh my god, Joe Blogs. Honestly, like, how did he know everything? I'm so confused.
Well, actually, do you know what? I'm very happy because for once he was wrong. So let me get into it.
Oh.
So, ancient Greek philosophers like Aristotle believed in something called spontaneous generation. This was the idea that life could just appear from non-living matter. Now, by non-living matter, Aristotle meant things like soil, water, or decaying organic material, things with no life in them at all. For example, he quite literally believed that worms could emerge from rotting meat and even that frogs could just like randomly appear in muddy ponds. Aristotle thought this happened because non-living matter, he thought, contained a special property that he called vital heat. And this wasn't heat as we think of it today. It was more like an inner energy or life force that could spark life under the right conditions. And to him, it explained why certain environments like warm and damp places seem to give rise to living creatures. So I'm very happy about this. Aristotle, he was wrong because obviously we know that like frogs don't just spawn out of nowhere.
Yeah, but very observant though, don't you think? Like, he literally, I don't know, how are you so observant throughout life that you notice in like warm and damp places there's more life than there is in like dry, arid places?
Exactly. And actually, it wasn't just Aristotle who believed in spontaneous generation. So if we fast forward to the 1600s, we meet Jan-Baptist van Helmont, a Dutch scientist who truly embraced the idea that life could emerge from non-living matter or just like out of thin air. So to Van Helmont, this wasn't just a theory, it was a fact that could be demonstrated. So I want us to picture him sitting in his study. He's surrounded by like jars and scraps of paper, and he is jotting down what he believed to be one of the greatest discoveries of his time: a recipe for creating mice. Here is what he wrote: take a dirty shirt, one soaked in sweat, and place it in a container with a handful of wheat. Leave it undisturbed for 21 days. So quite literally, he thinks you can get a sweaty shirt, put it in a container with some wheat, leave it for 3 weeks, and that's how mice are made. That's literally what he believes. Now, to Van Helmont, this wasn't a random guess. He believed the sweat in the shirt contained a kind of life force, like something invisible and powerful that could combine with the wheat to bring mice into existence. And at the time, no one questioned it, like because people didn't have the microscopes or the ability to see what was actually happening on a microscopic level. So, for example, like they couldn't see the tiny insect eggs or the bacteria and the microorganisms that we now know play a role in life's processes. Now, it wasn't until much later in the 1800s when Louis Pasteur set out to disprove spontaneous generation once and for all. So he was like as fed up with it as we are now. He's like, nah, that's just a load of crap. Don't believe it. So one day he was in his lab setting up what would become one of the most famous experiments in the history of science. He took a glass flask and carefully filled it with nutrient-rich broth, like basically food for microbes. First, he boiled the broth, and steam was rising from the flask as he killed off anything that might already be alive. Then he sealed the neck of the flask to make sure that nothing from the outside, so no dust, no bacteria could get in. And then he just waited. Days passed, weeks, months, and the broth stayed perfectly clear. In other words, no life appeared. So Pasteur had shown that under normal conditions, life doesn't just pop into existence randomly. Life, he proved, comes from life. And it was a revolutionary moment. Spontaneous generation was officially debunked.
Oh my god, that's actually crazy. I think I just love Louis Pasteur. I think he was like honestly just really revolutionary in science in general, because like
Yeah.
so many things come back to him when it comes to like microbiology, virology, stuff like that. Like I think it's so crazy, and I've actually heard of this before.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I think this is so interesting. So okay, so spontaneous generation is out, but how does that really explain where life, like the first life, actually comes from?
Yeah, okay. So to answer that, we actually have to go back even further, billions of years back to the earliest chapter of Earth's history, the Hadean Eon. It was as intense as it sounds, and the Hadean Eon started about 4.6 billion years ago when Earth first formed. And it's actually named after Hades, the Greek god of the underworld, because Earth during this time, well, it was hellish. So picture a brand new planet, still glowing hot from its birth, with a surface covered in molten rock. Asteroids and comets bombard it constantly, leaving massive craters. But as time passed, the impact slowed and Earth began to cool. And so a rocky crust formed, and water vapor condensed into rain, creating vast oceans. But don't imagine paradise. This was a harsh alien world. The atmosphere was thick and toxic, filled with gases like carbon dioxide, methane, nitrogen, and hydrogen sulfide. So there was almost no oxygen. So the sky would have looked like reddish and hazy. But despite all of this chaos, the Hadean Eon was actually the perfect setup for something extraordinary. So, between all of this chaos, Earth was teeming with energy, and that energy, combined with the raw materials in the ocean and atmosphere, things like water, methane, ammonia, and hydrogen, set the stage for the first step towards life. And scientists think this is where a process called abiogenesis began.
What's abiogenesis?
So, abiogenesis is the process by which life arises from non living matter. So, during the Hadean Eon, energy from volcanic eruptions, lightning storms, and the sun powered chemical reactions in the oceans and atmosphere. And single molecules like methane and ammonia started reacting to form more complex ones, like amino acids, the building blocks of proteins, and supposedly nucleotides, which we're going to circle back to at the end. These are the building blocks of DNA and RNA. Now, these molecules weren't alive yet, but they were the essential ingredients for life.
This is so mad to me that like they hypothesized that it all just like like it formed, I guess, out of like sheer chance. You know?
Yeah. So
So I
literally.
guess like it's forming the ingredients for like a recipe, and they're starting to come together.
Yep, exactly. And that recipe was brewing into what scientists now call the primordial soup, which I'm sure we've all heard of before.
Oh.
And like, obviously, this isn't soup as we normally think of it. It's not like, we're not eating it.
Not like tomato soup.
I actually just went to the shop and bought some soup. I'm really into my soup recently, and I feel like I'm getting old.
I love soup, but it's too hot here. I'm like, every time I crave one of those like really crap tomato soups in a tin.
Yeah.
With like a cheese toasty.
It's like so wrong, but so good.
Yeah, so good.
Anyway, we're going to go back to primordial soup. So this is a term for the nutrient-rich chemical mixture thought to exist in Earth's early oceans. So if we imagine a shallow, warm pool filled with water, gases from volcanic eruptions, and mineral salts, it's like bubbling and it's exposed to intense energy from the sun, lightning, and volcanic heat. And this chaotic environment was the perfect setting for chemical reactions, as molecules like methane, ammonia, hydrogen, and water vapor interacted. Here's the wild part. In 1953, two scientists, Stanley Miller, who was a graduate student at the University of Chicago, and Harold Urey, a Nobel Prize-winning chemist, set out to test whether the conditions of early Earth could produce the molecules necessary for life. Now, here's a really funny twist that I actually loved when I was doing the research for this. So Urey was actually already famous for his work on the origins of the solar system, which we covered 2 episodes ago in episode 4. And if you remember, we explored how the planets formed from a swirling cloud of gas and dust in what's known as the nebula hypothesis. And Urey actually worked and contributed to work in this area and the nebula hypothesis. But he extended this idea, studying the chemical processes that shaped planetary formation. And his research revealed why planets like Earth end up with atmospheres capable of supporting life. And that connection directly inspired this experiment, which I just thought was like such an interesting link between these 2 episodes.
Yeah, also wild that he was just like, oh, I'm just going to try and mimic what happened in space like billions of years ago. It's wild.
I know. And like, oh yeah, casually I'm busy working on the origins of the solar system, and now I'm going to go and try and work on the origins of life/DNA.
Yeah, that's actually mad.
So at the time, many scientists believed that Earth's early atmosphere was likely made up of simple gases, similar to the atmospheres of Jupiter and Saturn today. But Miller and Urey wanted to find out if these gases, exposed to energy sources like lightning, could spontaneously form organic molecules, the building blocks of life. So the experiment that they designed was both simple and brilliant. So they built a closed system of glass flasks and tubes to stimulate early Earth. So one flask contained water, which represented the ancient oceans, which they heated to produce water vapor. And this vapor mixed with the gases in the second flask, methane, ammonia, and hydrogen, which mimicked the primitive atmosphere. To stimulate lightning strikes, they introduced electrical sparks in a chamber within the system. The vapor then condensed and cycled back into the ocean, repeating the process endlessly. After running the experiment for just a week, Miller and Urey made a groundbreaking discovery. The water in the system turned to a murky brown, and when they analysed it, they actually found amino acids, the building blocks of proteins.
Oh my god, that's actually so wild. Imagine, this is what I think on every single episode, right, is when there's like a major discovery in time. I'm like, imagine being those scientists and finding that out and being like, and discovering that. That's actually insane. And when was this? Like, what time period was it?
This was in the 1950s.
Okay. Yeah, so again, like fairly, like, I would say in the context of this, fairly recently.
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
It's just wild that they're doing this stuff. But
literally
I guess
crazy.
One of my main questions is, how do we know that amino acids are actually formed? How did they know that?
Yeah, let's break it down. It's actually quite mind-blowing, to be fair. So imagine the electrical sparks. Remember, they're putting these electrical sparks in to like simulate lightning in like primitive Earth. So imagine the electrical sparks acting like scissors, cutting apart the simple molecules in the flask, methane, ammonia, hydrogen, and water vapor. The energy from these sparks broke the bonds holding these molecules together, freeing atoms like carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, and oxygen. Now, once freed, these atoms reassemble into new and more complex molecules. And 2 key molecules formed in this process were hydrogen cyanide and formaldehyde. And these are like the prep ingredients in a recipe. So they're reactive and they're ready to combine with other molecules to form something more elaborate or more sophisticated. For example, hydrogen cyanide reacts with ammonia and water to create glycine, the simplest amino acid. And glycine's structure is basic but essential. It's made of a central carbon atom bonded to an amino group, a carboxyl group, and a single hydrogen atom. And here's the incredible part. This wasn't like a one-time fluke. The experiment produced a range of amino acids like alanine and aspartic acid. many of which are the exact same ones found in proteins today. The real magic comes from the energy provided by the sparks, which kind of act as a catalyst to drive these chemical reactions forward. So without that energy, the simple gases wouldn't have rearranged themselves into the complex molecules necessary for life. But this process isn't just limited to Earth. And this is really, really interesting, but similar reactions actually happen in space. And scientists have actually found amino acids on meteorites and even in interstellar dust clouds, where cosmic radiation or UV light from stars provides the energy. So, this suggests that the building blocks of life might form wherever the right conditions exist, making life's chemistry a universal phenomenon, which I think is just so, so cool.
Yeah, that's actually insane that, like, I actually really didn't know that we found other amino acids on, like, meteorites and stuff. It's actually mad to think that, well, it's not mad to think that the same sort of conditions can be found elsewhere. It's just kind of mad to think that similar or the same amino acids can be found on things from other planets or deep in space. That's mad.
I think the most interesting part for me was the bit about like them being found near nebulae, because we spoke on in episode 4 about how they are like the birthplace of basically like solar systems potentially. So I think that's so interesting. But amino acids are just the start if we're talking about the context of like origins of life or origins of DNA, right? They're the building blocks of proteins, and proteins, as we know, they are essential for life. But this is actually where we hit one of the biggest puzzles in molecular biology, the so-called chicken and egg problem. So if we think about it, to replicate DNA, you need proteins like enzymes to copy and repair the strands. But proteins themselves are built using instructions encoded in DNA. So the question then becomes, how did the first self-replicating system arise if each one depends on the other to exist? Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. Because it's like, obviously, like today, amino acids arise in our bodies to form proteins based on our like DNA code. So, yes, like a catch-22, like which came first, DNA or protein? Is maybe we just discovered protein first, right? So, yeah, how did the first life form get its start, I guess? Because we're talking about amino acids and like organic molecules and stuff, but like that hasn't linked to literal life yet. So how did that happen?
Yeah, that's like the heart of the question, I guess. And this is actually where the RNA world hypothesis comes in. So you probably heard the phrase life begets life. And for the most part, that's true. Every living thing today came from a living ancestor, right? But for life to exist in the first place, it obviously had to start somewhere. And scientists actually believe that RNA may have been the missing link. So, unlike DNA, which is a stable storage system for genetic information, RNA is kind of like a multitasker. So, it can carry genetic instructions like DNA, but it can also speed up chemical reactions, acting as an enzyme, something that proteins do today. And this dual ability makes RNA a really strong candidate for the first self replicating molecule in life's history.
That does make sense because I'm going to be a classic virologist here and say,
I knew you
like,
would.
if you've got a if you've got like a RNA virus, it's like less stable and like constantly mutating compared to like a DNA virus. But like, where did RNA come from? Like, it's all well and good saying, oh, we think RNA predated DNA, but like, where did that come from?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, to understand how RNA could have formed, we can kind of break it down into its parts, right? Like ribose, nitrogenous bases, and phosphate. So, ribose, the sugar in RNA, is believed to potentially have formed in volcanic hot springs through the foremost reaction. Nitrogen bases, on the other hand, like adenine and guanine, likely formed from the hydrogen cyanide and ammonia in shallow ponds or hydrothermal vents under UV light. And then phosphate, which is essential for RNA's backbone, probably came from volcanic minerals. So cycles of wetting and drying concentrated these molecules, which basically allowed RNA strands to form. So essentially, primitive Earth, so like Earth in its early state, with like all of this chaos going on, there's like all of these chemical reactions, basically ended up forming the components for RNA to form. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's actually mad. And how they hypothesize where each part is actually from, that's actually crazy.
Yeah. And like one really big thing that, like, if you read about the origins of DNA or the origins of life or whatever, one really big thing is that everybody says it's literally like a chemical fluke, because it's so like random how all of this happened.
So, okay, moving on to, or continuing on from what we've discussed. So once RNA is formed, it could store this kind of information, and then it could catalyze reactions straight away, or?
Yeah, exactly. This dual role set the stage for molecular, like natural selection. So the stable RNA molecules thrived while the weaker ones kind of like broke apart. And over time, this evolutionary process led to increasingly complex systems and eventually DNA and proteins as we know them. And this wasn't just a theory. Scientists have actually created RNA molecules called ribosomes in the lab. And these ribosomes can catalyze their own replication, supporting the idea that RNA could have been what bridged the gap between chemistry and biology. But RNA wasn't just a stepping stone to DNA, so it also had the ability to fold into intricate shapes, making it a multitasker and, like we've already said, capable of speeding up chemical reactions while also carrying this genetic information. And even today, RNA in ribosomes performs the catalytic steps of protein synthesis, a living relic of the ancient RNA world.
Okay, so that's really interesting how like it kind of mimics sort of the earlier ancient RNA world in life today. But obviously we know that DNA is around now, presumably because it's more stable entity than RNA, which is like really fragile and like, yeah, is that right?
Yeah, that is exactly right. And like we've already said as well, like especially in the harsh conditions of early Earth, it definitely wasn't robust enough to handle, like you said, the increasing complexity of life. But another challenge was concentration. So the primordial oceans, you kind of have like RNA molecules floating around in this enormous ocean, and obviously they're tiny. So for meaningful interactions to occur, because obviously for RNA to form, right, you need all of these chemicals to keep coming into contact with each other, and like that's how they kind of like, I guess, stick together and then grow. But because the primordial oceans were so big and the RNA molecules are so tiny, RNA kind of like, in order for it to grow and like evolve, I guess, it actually needed to be confined into smaller spaces. And this is where fatty acid protocells come into play. Now, these protocells created isolated environments which allowed RNA to replicate more efficiently and evolve without being diluted or destroyed. So they kind of acted as like boxes for the RNA to like sit in and like actually grow and evolve. But even with these protective bubbles, RNA still had its limits. And this is actually where DNA comes in. So unlike RNA, DNA is double-stranded, making it more stable and less prone to errors. And its complementary strands even allow it to repair itself when damaged, giving it a major evolutionary advantage. So how then did DNA evolve from RNA? So the transition likely happened, obviously, gradually, but with the help of an enzyme called ribonucleotide reductase. Now, this enzyme actually converted RNA precursors into the building blocks of DNA. So protocells containing both RNA and DNA ended up having a huge advantage. DNA stored genetic instructions long term, while RNA catalyzed reactions and drove metabolism. And this kind of like division of labor set the stage for more complex life. So again, it was all just like some weird chemical coincidence. Like it just happened to be this random enzyme that just turns RNA into double-stranded DNA. And then any protocells or these little boxes that end up having a bit of both had an evolutionary advantage. So in what you could call like an early molecular arms race, protocells with DNA outcompeted other protocells. There was a trade-off though. So maintaining DNA required more energy than RNA, but DNA's robustness helped protocells survive environmental stress, like the volatile conditions of hot springs or hydrothermal vents. And over time, natural selection favored protocells of DNA, and it became the primary molecule for storing genetic information. So then RNA, freed from this role, specialized as a catalyst, making life more efficient and setting the stage for incredible complexity.
Oh my gosh, that's actually mad. Yeah, because I keep bringing it back to like everything we do in the lab, right? Because like you can leave like DNA at 4 degrees for a while and it will be fine. But like I remember when I did like RNA extractions from viruses, I would have to really quickly get it into a -80 and not leave it kind of out for very long. Otherwise, it would just lose the RNA. So I'm like linking that to what you're saying about the hot springs and stuff, where like
Mm-hmm.
DNA was still stable in that environment, whereas RNA just like wasn't. And then that naturally selected for the protocells with the DNA in. So
Mm-hmm.
I guess it completely changed the game, right? So it's like DNA is more stable, and then RNA, yeah, like you said, had this other catalyzing or catalyst role.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So DNA was the blueprint that allowed life to evolve like beyond simple protocells. Yeah. But remember the like chicken and egg problem that we spoke about earlier?
Mm,
So how proteins are needed to replicate DNA, but DNA is needed to create proteins. So
yeah.
solving this paradox wasn't instant. It required the co-evolution of RNA, DNA, and proteins. And it's likely that RNA actually acted as a middleman. So DNA stored genetic instructions while RNA translated them into proteins that performed essential tasks. And over time, enzymes like DNA polymerase evolved to replicate DNA with remarkable accuracy, as we now know today. And this cooperative system became the foundation for all of life as we know it today. So basically, RNA was that bitch. She just done it all. Can I just say as well, like I was driving to the shop earlier with my boyfriend and I was like telling him about what this episode was going to be about. And I
Mm.
literally said to him, like, I swear I've learned more on this podcast than I have learned through like my 2 biology degrees and like my whole school life.
Yeah, literally some of the research that I've done, especially for this episode, I think, because we don't really learn, well, I definitely didn't learn the history of the science that you kind of just learn where it's up to today, right?
Yeah.
And like learning about the history of it and also the origins of stuff, I'm literally like, this is crazy to think, because
Yeah.
this, a lot of it centers, all like the biological stuff centers a lot around evolution and stuff, and like that
Mm-hmm.
kind of forms the basis of, I guess, our idea on where the origins of stuff came from. And I feel like at school you only really learn about like Darwin's theory of evolution and natural
Yeah.
selection.
Or
Like you
like
don't really
confirmed
learn
theories.
more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You especially don't cover
Yeah.
like the things that were incorrect. Like at the start, we spoke about like spontaneous generation and like the recipe for mice. And I think all of that is really interesting because they're all like all
Yeah.
of those things needed to happen to shape the theories that are correct. Do you know what I mean?
For sure.
But talking of like DNA's origins, I feel like it raises an even deeper question. Like, where did, and we kind of said the same thing in episode 4, but my question is, where did its building blocks, like, where did they come from? Like, were they formed on
Mm.
Earth or did they arrive from somewhere else? Maybe not our planet.
Aliens.
No, for real, this actually is like a conspiracy theory. It's a theory that actually aliens sent the ingredients for life to Earth. But also people theorize about like alien chemistry. And this is the idea behind panspermia, which is the theory that life's building blocks or even life itself might have originated elsewhere and actually been delivered to Earth by meteors or comets. So, for example, there was a meteorite that landed in Australia in 1969 that contained amino acids, the building blocks of proteins, and nuclear bases needed for RNA and DNA. And what's more, these compounds closely match those used by life on Earth today. But even if life's ingredients came from space, Earth itself was obviously, like primitive Earth was an extraordinary chemistry lab itself. And the Miller-Urey experiment in 1953 showed this. So whether life's ingredients formed here or maybe they hitched a ride like from space, one thing is clear, and that is that life's chemistry is universal.
It brings me back to the viruses episode and like the origins of viruses, because there is also like a conspiracy theory that viruses are like remnants of biological warfare from like an ancient race or like a alien civilization. I just love that idea. I'm a bit of a sci-fi fan, so I'm like, oh, it could have been a thing. Like, let's not rule it out.
Well, you know, hint, hint for the listeners. We might want to note that one down, Taz, for next season's theme, because we may or may not be covering some conspiracy theories in next season. We'll see, maybe.
Yeah.
So to kind of round off, I just want to say that life's story is as much about chance as it is about chemistry, and the story of DNA is still unfolding. So we know it's the molecule that made life possible on Earth, but its origins, like we just said, they remind us of a bigger question. If the building blocks of life are scattered across the universe, could life itself be more common than we think? What if somewhere out there on a distant planet or moon, life is just beginning its own separate journey? The same sparks, the same chemistry that happened here billions of years ago could actually be happening right now, somewhere else in the universe, rewriting the narrative of what it means to be alive. In the end, DNA isn't just a molecule, it's a reminder that in chaos there is creation, and that the spark of life can ignite even in the unlikeliest corners of the universe.
Thanks so much for that, Liv. I really enjoyed this episode because, yeah, it really delved into things that I hadn't really thought about before. And obviously, if you're listening and you want to learn more about the topic, we always do try to leave some of the links that we used for our research in the description below. But now we are going on to our laboratory. But this week we are bringing back the would you rathers. So let's get into it. I'll slip into your dreams tonight. Okay, I'm going to just get straight into it. So we asked you guys some of our fave would you rathers, and so I'm going to ask the question to both Liv and I, and we will answer the question and then we'll delve into the results from the poll. So the very first would you rather is, would you rather have all your code from your job wiped or have ggplot removed from CRAN permanently? Now, you're going to have to enlighten me on this because I have absolutely no idea what that means.
What part? What, the ggplot part?
Yeah. And CRAN, what's that?
ggplot is like, was a gift from God himself. So ggplot is basically the main package in R that people use to create plots and like graphs, and it's like the best one, and it's probably the one that everyone knows and uses the most because it's so good. So like, having that wiped would be devastating. I would be devastated. But then having all of your code wiped from your job, that's some madness.
I love how you're in a moral dilemma and I'm just like, crickets are going on in my head because I'm just like, I don't know what it is.
Okay, well, Taz, it's like, basically, would you rather like all of your experiments are like scrapped, done, like they're all just deleted off the face of the earth? Or would you rather like the most important machine in your lab break? That's like,
I guess
like, it can never be replaced.
It's kind of similar to like GraphPad Prism, right? It makes all your graphs, does all your.
All the bioinformaticians listening just shuddered, like actually like shuddered. Their skin just crawled hearing you say that.
Well, I'm a GraphPad Prism girly.
It's like a tool, so I guess it's comparable to like, the most important piece of equipment in your lab. Break in, like you can never get it back. So it's on that level. of difficulty?
I'll just remove 𝗂𝗄𝗧. Bye.
I'm going to go with wipe all my code from my job because it's probably just a bunch of shit anyway. So it's probably good if I rewrite it. Do you know what I mean?
From someone who's like literally does experiments, I cannot imagine all my data being wiped. Like, no, sorry.
Well,
Imagine,
I guess it's
that's
not.
such a
No,
waste
for
of money
us.
as
No,
well.
for us, it's not really our data. It's like to reproduce our data is gone, but like technically we could still keep the graphs, and then you just got to rewrite the code to like redo the graphs. But I don't know, because like all of your job, that's really hard. But I'm gonna go with remove my code from my job. Remove it. I'm keeping ggplot. 100%.
Okay. 35% voted for all code wiped.
Why does nobody ever agree with me?
65%.
Ever.
You're not a lady of the people, sorry.
I'm not. Guys, I love you. Why can't you just love me back?
65% decided ggplot can be
Wow.
removed permanently. So the very next would you rather is, would you rather wear a lab coat 2 times too small or lab goggles forever? I already immediately know my answer to this.
I mean, lab goggles forever could be kind of sexy. Like, I think some people look good in lab goggles. Do you know what I mean? Like, no?
Okay.
Like some weird kink.
See, I was immediately gonna I was immediately gonna be like, lab coat 2 times too small. Like, I'll just deal with it because there is no way in hell I'm wearing lab goggles forever. I mean, I wear glasses and I find them so overstimulating on my face, and sunglasses are even worse. Like, they're just so annoying.
You know,
So
the people
I'm
who wear
like a
sunglasses like all the
contact
time.
girly.
Like, how do people do that? Like, my sister's girlfriend wears sunglasses 24/7. Like, sun, rain, wind, whatever it is, she's got sunglasses on. And I'm like, they annoy me. And also, how does your makeup not get ruined?
I cannot stand wearing sunglasses, especially how on earth do people wear sunglasses when they drive? Like, it just
Oh my God,
baffles
now
me.
no, I'm in full agreement with that. I feel like it blurs my vision. Like, I all of a sudden have a million blind spots. Like, there's a fucking lorry coming towards me, like, head on, and I can't see it. But I don't understand how people wear sunglasses when they're driving. Like, thank you.
It looks so cool, but I'm sorry, just not part of the gang.
This is true, and like the lab goggles used to really annoy me. So I'm also with you. Like, I'm gonna wear the lab coat that's 2 times too small, because, to be honest, that's gonna be like a kid's lab coat though. Actually, because I'm small as it is, it's gonna be like
That's gonna be a newborn baby's lab coat.
Can I just say that, like, I'm pretty close to like the actual definition of dwarfism. I found this out because
Wait, so it's under 5 foot, is it, or 4'8" or something?
I don't think it's that. Okay, so I like to say that I'm 5 foot, but like my mum has this thing that she thinks I'm 4'11", and the legal definition, the scientific medical definition of dwarfism is 4'10".
Oh my gosh. Is that for a female though?
Is it different for males and females?
Must be.
Anyway, I am I'm pretty close to. So yeah, I think it'd pretty much be a kid's lab coat. Anyway, I feel like we just keep going on tangents already in these would you rathers. Like, we're just in that mood today where we're just going on like having a million conversations at once. I pick lab coat 2 times too small.
Yeah, I do as well, because if you think I'm going to wear my normal glasses and then lab goggles on top forever and ever and ever, you've got another thing coming, because I have to do that in the lab sometimes and I just can't. It's just, why
Imagine
can't I just
like your
wear
wedding
my normal
day.
Glasses? Oh my God.
Or even like, do you know what would be really awkward is like turning up to someone's funeral in lab goggles.
Or just having sex.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Or it could be
that's
sexy,
so true.
actually. Like,
kink.
hey.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. It could be someone's kink, so maybe like wearing them during sex is not so bad.
This was actually really split. I'm really surprised by this. So 58% said small lab coat and 42% said lab goggles forever.
Maybe you want it
let's
for
move on
us.
to the next one. The next one is, would you rather rewrite your PhD thesis from scratch or do a 3-hour public lecture on it without slides? Again, this is so easy for me.
You think I'm rewriting that thesis? Are you having a laugh?
Are you having a laugh, mate? That was the worst time of my life. And mine was in the height of COVID as well. So I was like literally confined to my house, but also confined to a room for that entire time. Because I would literally be like, I would wake up, sometimes not even eat breakfast, honestly. Like, it was not healthy. And I would just get straight on the laptop right away. And like, my eyes would be bloodshot by the end of the day. Like,
Oh my God, that's so real.
the things that I had to do to keep motivated. I put YouTube videos up of other people studying so that I would
Same.
do my own stuff. And like, I can't even listen to lo-fi music anymore because it just
You're
reminds me of the days where I was like writing my thesis in, day out, because that's all I played was like lo-fi music to just be able to
Hear
get
me
through.
out. Let's break this down. Could you give a 3-hour lecture on it about slides?
Well, probably won't be that good, but I would rather do that and be humiliated in the process because it's crap than do that again. So
I reckon I could do it. I actually fully reckon I could do it.
I reckon I could do it as well. Because if you think
did like a
about
pretty
it as
good
well,
job.
like Viva is like 3 hours long, isn't it? So yeah, I reckon I could talk about it, do a little, like a long introduction. Then I had 3 research, or like you could talk about your methods as well. I don't think I would want to do that, but I have 3 research chapters as well, so I could like spend like 50 minutes on each of them, and then long old discussion at the end. Easy.
Oh, I reckon, yeah. So we're going to go with, we ain't writing that thesis again. No way.
Absolutely not.
I
So
feel like
it
everyone
seems
agreed
like,
with us.
yeah, general consensus was 20% of people said rewrite PhD, which you're mad if you voted for that. You're actually crazy. And 80% said a 3-hour lecture. So we are with the majority. And I think a lot of people probably think the same as us regarding rewriting their thesis. If that's
I
the
want to
case.
speak to them 20%. Like, why?
Yeah. Maybe they
Like,
just really hate public speaking, which I get.
And love writing. Anyway, that is the last Would You Rather for this season. So the rest of our laboratories for this season are going to be some listener stories from you guys, because as we mentioned when we started this series, we have so many piled up in our email to get through. And if you are someone who wants to share your own listener story, then don't forget that you can find the anonymous link in today's episode description. Or if you're watching us on YouTube, you can find it in today's video description. And also just another plug that if you are someone obviously who likes watching along rather than just listening, don't forget we are now uploading full video episodes on YouTube, so make sure you come over there and subscribe and also hit the notification bell so that you don't miss any of our uploads. But with that rounds off episode 6 of the So Cultured podcast, the origins. So we will see you guys in next week's episode, where we are going to be diving into the origins of consciousness, which I am so excited for. This is the episode that I have been waiting for, so I'm very excited. So yeah, we will catch you guys in next week's episode. Bye everyone.
Bye.